Ilara lived a life painted in muted tones, a young woman adrift in a sea of fleeting connections and unfulfilled longings. Repeated rejections had carved deep valleys of insecurity within her, leaving her isolated, yearning for the warmth of genuine affection. Each passing day deepened her desperation for love and acceptance, a hunger that gnawed at her very core. She scrolled through endless social media feeds, witnessing the effortless joy of others, a constant painful reminder of her own perceived inadequacy. The world, it seemed, had a secret language of love she simply couldn't decipher. One desolate evening, while aimlessly browsing a dusty, forgotten corner of the internet, Ilara stumbled upon something peculiar. An old, obscure e-book detailing love spells and ancient rituals. Her initial reaction was a scoff, a dismissive flick of her wrist. Such things belonged in fantasy novels, not in her stark reality. Yet, the gnawing loneliness was a persistent whisper, a siren song promising solace. A flicker of curiosity ignited within her, fanned by the relentless wind of her desperation. She found herself drawn to a shadowy online forum, a labyrinth of cryptic posts and hushed testimonials. There, a user, whose avatar was a hooded figure holding a glowing orb, subtly encouraged her, speaking of forgotten powers and untapped desires. The skepticism remained, a fragile shield, but hope, raw and unbidden, began to bloom in its cracks. Ilara decided to try. The first ritual, described in the archaic text, seemed simple enough on the surface. She gathered the prescribed items, a lock of her own hair, a dried rose petal, and a sliver of beeswax. As she prepared, a chilling mix of fear and naive hope coursed through her veins. The air in her small apartment felt thick, heavy with anticipation. Lighting the beeswax candle, she recited the incantations, her voice a hesitant murmur in the oppressive silence. The words felt alien on her tongue, yet a strange energy pulsed around her. It was unsettling, the flickering shadows dancing like specters, twisting her reflection into something unfamiliar. She extinguished the candle, a shiver running down her spine, convinced it was all a foolish endeavor. Then he appeared, Julian. He walked into her life like a character from a dream, charming, attentive, and seemingly perfect. He was everything Ilara had ever yearned for. His eyes held a captivating intensity, his laughter a melody she instantly adored. Their connection felt immediate, undeniable, a whirlwind romance that swept her off her feet. Ilara, giddy with newfound joy, attributed his sudden, intense affection solely to the ritual. This belief infused her with a dangerous sense of power, a heady intoxication. She had conjured him, she thought, and he was hers. He showered her with compliments, spoke of a future together, and made her feel seen, truly seen, for the very first time. Yet beneath the veneer of perfection, subtle signs of Julian's possessiveness began to emerge. He disliked her spending time with friends, preferred her undivided attention, and sometimes his gaze held an intensity that bordered on unsettling. Ilara, however, dismissed these as mere manifestations of his intense love, proof of her ritual's success. As weeks turned into months, Ilara found herself plagued by strange dreams, vivid and disturbing, dissolving into fragments upon waking. Unsettling coincidences multiplied, small, inexplicable events that pricked at her subconscious. Her close friend, Sarah, expressed concern, her brow furrowed with worry over Julian's rapid integration into Ilara's life. "He's always around, Ilara," Sarah had commented, her voice laced with an unspoken apprehension. "It's like he's everywhere." Ilara, however, brushed off the warnings, increasingly isolated from her support system as Julian subtly steered her away from her old life. A growing unease began to settle in Ilara's heart, a discordant note in her otherwise perfect symphony of love. Despite this, she felt a compulsive need to solidify Julian's devotion. Consulting the obscure text once more, she discovered a more potent ritual, one that promised an unbreakable bond. A growing sense of dread accompanied her preparations, a chilling premonition she couldn't quite shake. This new ritual demanded a greater personal sacrifice, hinting at a darker, more profound price. As she performed it, the air crackled with a malevolent energy she hadn't felt before, a cold dread seeping into her bones. Immediately, Julian's behavior became more erratic, his possessiveness intensifying into outright control. His charm, once so alluring, now felt like a thinly veiled mask, revealing a manipulative streak that sent shivers down her spine. The perfect man was fraying at the edges. One evening, while Julian was out, Ilara, driven by a sudden, inexplicable urge, began to tidy his bedside table. Tucked beneath a stack of old magazines, she discovered a small, intricately carved wooden effigy, a chillingly familiar symbol from her occult readings. It was directly linked to her rituals, but not in the way she had ever imagined. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The carved effigy, meticulously detailed and unsettlingly familiar, lay cold and inert in Ilara's trembling hand. It was not one of hers, yet the symbolism resonated deeply with the arcane texts she had consulted. A knot of ice formed in her stomach. This wasn't a charm for attracting love, but a binding totem, a relic used to ensnare and control. The initial confusion quickly gave way to a chilling realization. The rituals she had performed were not unique, nor were they solely for her benefit. Her perfect romance with Julian, once a shimmering beacon of hope, began to crack under the immense weight of this horrifying suspicion. His sudden appearance, his intense devotion, his possessiveness, it all clicked into place, painted with a terrifying new brush. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Ilara revisited the shadowy online forum where her dark journey had begun. The hooded avatar, the subtle encouragement, it all seemed sinister now. She messaged the user directly, her fingers shaking as she typed, demanding to know the true meaning of the effigy. Days passed in agonizing silence until a cryptic reply arrived, directing her to a small, unassuming antique shop nestled in a forgotten alleyway downtown. Inside, among shelves laden with forgotten trinkets and dusty tomes, sat an enigmatic figure, an elderly woman with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. This was the mentor, the one who had subtly guided Ilara. With a knowing glance, the woman revealed the true nature of the spells. They didn't attract love. They bound, manipulated, and ultimately consumed. Ilara's heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. The magic she had wielded, believing it to be a key to happiness, was a chain, forged in desperation and wielded by something ancient and cruel. As Ilara's doubt festered, a palpable shift occurred in Julian. His charm dissolved, replaced by an overt hostility that sent shivers down her spine. His possessiveness, once dismissed as intense love, now manifested as outright control, his words laced with veiled threats. He became a shadow, always present, always watching. A terrifying flashback, unbidden and vivid, surfaced in Ilara's mind, a fleeting glimpse of Julian with another woman, her eyes wide with fear, her movements stiff and unnatural, almost puppet-like. Then another. A whispered conversation overheard in a coffee shop about a man who collects women. Julian, it seemed, had a history of using similar manipulative tactics, a predator disguised as a lover. Ilara wasn't attracting love, she had attracted a monster. The love she had felt, the intense connection, was a meticulously crafted illusion, a powerful psychic influence woven by the rituals. Ilara now understood with horrifying clarity that the spells had not only affected Julian, bending him to a twisted form of devotion, but they had also begun to drain her own energy, subtly eroding her free will. Her vibrant spirit, once dimmed by insecurity, was now being actively siphoned, leaving her feeling hollow and constantly fatigued. The mentor figure, far from being a benevolent guide, had been using her, profiting from her desperate yearning for affection. The antique shop, the forum, the obscure texts, all part of a carefully constructed web designed to ensnare the vulnerable. A crushing wave of guilt washed over Ilara. She had brought this upon herself, her desperate plea for love twisting into a monstrous reality. Fear, cold and insidious, coiled around her heart, tightening its grip with each passing hour. Julian's control was absolute, his presence suffocating. Her sanity felt fragile, teetering on the edge. She knew she had to break free, but the binding, she now understood, was far more powerful than she could have ever imagined. It was not merely a spell, it was a symbiotic tether, slowly draining her life force. One night, the tension reached a breaking point. Ilara, fueled by a desperate surge of self-preservation, confronted Julian. His eyes, usually so captivating, now glowed with a malevolent light. "You can't leave me," he hissed, his voice a low growl. "We are bound, Ilara, forever." A dramatic power struggle erupted, not of fists, but of wills. A clash of dark energies. The room seemed to warp, shadows dancing and stretching as the full extent of the occult influence manifested. Julian's face contorted, his features momentarily twisting into something inhuman, a glimpse of the monstrous being corrupted by the dark magic. Ilara recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. The only way out, she realized with a sickening lurch, was a dangerous counter-ritual, one that promised unknown consequences, a perilous gamble with her very soul. Ilara, with the resolve she hadn't known she possessed, began preparing for the counter-ritual. The mentor's cryptic warnings echoed in her mind, a symphony of dread and necessity. This wasn't a spell of attraction, but one of severance, demanding not merely ingredients, but an unyielding will and a willingness to confront the deepest recesses of her own fear. She spent days poring over the forbidden texts, each ancient symbol and arcane instruction etching itself into her mind. The ritual demanded a crucible of personal sacrifice, a symbolic shedding of the very desperation that had led her down this dark path. She meticulously gathered items representing her lost innocence, her yearning for external validation, and even a lock of hair, a tangible piece of herself to offer to the vortex she was about to unleash. The night of the counter-ritual was moonless, the air thick with an oppressive stillness. In the flickering candlelight of her living room, Ilara drew intricate symbols on the floor, her hands steady despite the tremor in her heart. Each stroke was a declaration of defiance, a reclaiming of her autonomy. As she began the incantations, her voice, initially a whisper, grew in strength, resonating with a power she hadn't known she harbored. The room pulsed, the shadows deepening and swirling as if alive. It was physically and mentally draining, each word tearing at the fabric of her being, pushing her to the precipice of her endurance. Images of Julian's distorted face, her own past rejections, and the mentor's insidious smile flashed before her eyes, a gauntlet of psychological torment. But she pushed through, fueled by a fierce desire for freedom. As the final syllable left her lips, a deafening crack rent the air, a visceral tearing sensation that vibrated through Ilara's bones. Julian, who had been in the next room, let out a guttural cry, a sound of pure agony and confusion. His influence, the suffocating tether that had bound them, shattered. Ilara felt an immediate, profound sense of release, like a heavy weight being lifted from her soul. But it was not without cost. An overwhelming exhaustion washed over her, a bone-deep weariness that settled into her very core. The lingering trauma of the past months clung to her, a phantom limb of fear and manipulation. Julian, found moments later, was a shell of his former self, his eyes vacant, his charm utterly gone, replaced by a bewildered emptiness. The backlash of the broken spell had not destroyed him, but it had stripped him of his malevolent power, leaving him adrift and harmless. The slow, arduous process of recovery began. Ilara reached out to the close friend she had pushed away, confessing the terrifying truth of her ordeal. To her surprise, her friend listened without judgment, offering solace and unwavering support. Together, they confronted the enigmatic mentor figure. Ilara, now armed with clarity and strength, exposed the woman's manipulative practices, ensuring that her web of deceit would unravel and ensnare no one else. The antique shop, once a source of dark allure, was eventually shut down, its secrets scattered. Through this harrowing journey, Ilara finally understood the true meaning of love and connection. It was not a force to be conjured or manipulated, but a delicate bond built on trust, respect, and mutual vulnerability. The desperate yearning for external validation had been a cage, and her unwitting foray into the occult had been a terrifying lesson in its dangers. She embraced self-love and self-acceptance, recognizing her inherent worth, no longer defined by the gaze of others. Her experience transformed her, forging her into a stronger, more empathetic individual. Ilara dedicated herself to helping others avoid similar pitfalls. She spoke openly about her past, sharing her story to expose the seductive dangers of such practices and to advocate for healthy, authentic relationships. She found genuine connection and happiness built on trust and mutual respect, not on manufactured desire. The scar of her past remained, a subtle reminder of the darkness she had overcome, a testament to her resilience. Ilara found peace and a profound sense of purpose, having redeemed herself through her trials. She became a beacon of hope for those struggling with loneliness and despair, her voice a guiding light in the shadows. Free and empowered, Ilara looked towards a brighter future, forever changed but ultimately triumphant.